Let's go right to it, right? U.S. electricity bills are going through the roof, right? Average U.S. residential electricity prices rose 5% year over year to a record 17.3 cents per kilowatt hour in 2025. And since January of 2020, so 6 years ago, electricity prices have risen 30%. All right, welcome back. Let's cut to the chase on this next story. Let's go right to it, right? U.S. electricity bills are going through the roof, right? Average U.S. residential electricity prices rose 5% year over year to a record 17.3 cents per kilowatt hour in 2025. And since January of 2020, so 6 years ago, electricity prices have risen 30% or more in at least 11 U.S. states, with the steepest increases concentrated in the Northeast and Midwest. That's going to leave a mark, right? That's going to leave a bruise. But it gets worse. In parts of eastern Pennsylvania, electricity prices, they've surged, it's hard to say this, 200% over that period, adding about $23 per month to the average household bill this year. Data centers, well, they're expected to add at least $23 billion to customer bills on PJM interconnections, the nation's largest power grid. And that's over the next 3 years, ending May of 2028. So all that's bad news, right? So in March, Senator Bernie Sanders and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, they introduced an AI data center moratorium act, which seeks a national pause on the construction and upgrading of new AI data centers. Sanders and other critics point out that the massive power demands of data centers are going to be driving up the utility bills for everyday Americans. There are even calls to limit the sale of America's farmland to these data centers. Lots to unwrap here, so we've got our next guest to do that for us. He's got something to say about it, I'm sure. Please welcome into the show, Mr. Dale Smothers. Thanks for being on, Dale, and taking the time here today. This is going to get more and more contested as we get more and more of them built. There's a lot of people that don't like, not in my backyard kind of a deal. What are your thoughts on these electricity prices and then from there on going into these data centers? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, one thing is for sure that America needs to win at AI, and AI demands power. So America needs a plan, Scott. And you look at the everyday household, seeing a 200% increase in electricity is good for no one. In our opinion, I think the answer is less regulation, more expedited permitting, more energy centers that are creating this energy on the grid, strengthening our grid, and perhaps even a private partnership with government to incentivize these companies to build more of their own grid that they'll be using along the way.
Yeah, I think I was pretty sure that President Trump put in there that these data centers can actually build their own power plants, and if they can, and he's going to help them make sure that they don't take from other people's power. They're actually bringing power to the situation. I think there was something like that. Am I missing it?
No, I think you're exactly right. And this idea that they can build their own power plants is the progressive agenda that we need on this AI push. The idea that we are going to handcuff these companies or put a pause, a moratorium from our good friends AOC and Bernie Sanders. What happened to the progressive wing of the Democratic Party? The reality is, I think that AI actually has the opportunity for us, Scott, to help us build a more efficient power grid as it begins to come more into fruition. And, I think we need to open up things like natural gas, nuclear energy, and renewables, but not force a country and its grid to be solely reliant upon, let's say, solar or renewables, which is what the previous administration did. This drill, baby, drill philosophy, this independence with power and energy in America makes America more dominant. Winning the AI race is a must for Americans. It could very easily continue to bring this short-term gain until we get a plan for allowing these data centers to build their own power plants, for sure.
Yeah. So another thing I'm really interested in, because, I grew up in an agricultural community and or at least going to one, and this idea that we're not going to be able to let farmers sell their land to data centers because everybody's worried about losing farmland for food, which I understand that concern. There is a genuine concern there, and I totally get that. But I also have to look at it from the farmer's point of view. I mean, can you imagine owning a piece of property? It doesn't have to be a farm. It could be a house. It could be a building, and have the government tell you that you cannot sell that building to that company, or you cannot sell your house to that bidder, or you cannot sell your farm to this bidder. Now, we've seen some farmers turn down some big time dough because of what it might do to the local area and how it might change the town. I understand that, and that's very laudable. But there might be some people out there that are willing to cash out and would love to take the money and run. And to have the government come in and tell you as a seller in a free market system of who you can and cannot sell to, I have kind of a problem with that. Am I off on the wrong track here?
Not at all, Scott. Not at all. I think that this idea that you can tell anyone what they can and can't do with their own property is completely absurd. It is, unfortunately, the way that the trend was going up until probably about, say, 8 years ago. A certain administration came in and maybe reversed course. This is why I think a lot of that progressive agenda has gotten so upset with the way that things have shifted. But this free market society, this involvement with the government, getting involved in whether or not a farmer can or can't sell his land. You know, I've actually heard this specifically in our area. We're not too far from one another, Scott. Just right down the road from you, we've got clients that have been approached by these mega solar power or data center industries that are trying to build on their land, and it's their decision as to whether or not they want to do this. I think there's actually some potential, let's say, futuristic goal for these data centers to put some of this into space, which could theoretically help everyone. But in the meantime, I think that the government should be working hard with these data centers to help build power plants as opposed to getting nosy into other people's possessions like farmland.
Yeah, you're right, because, you know, this is not a new issue. I remember probably about 25 or 30 years ago when we were still worried about housing, and a lot of these big firms were buying farmland to put houses up, right? And they did a ton of it, and everybody was up in arms about, oh my gosh, we're losing all this farmland to housing. But then, I'm not kidding you, a lot of these commodities that these farmers were planting on those places before they went into housing, those prices shot through the roof, Dale. And a lot of these places were knocking down houses to put crops back in again. So, I mean, it kind of comes in ebbs and flows. We'll see how it all shapes out. But I think that it's going to be an interesting debate going forward. But one thing is not up for debate, and I absolutely agree with you. And you started off the talk with it, is we cannot lose this AI war, and we're not going to. I appreciate you coming on the show, Dale. Awesome to have you on. Dale Smothers, just up the road in Bowling Green.